Hi everyone, my name's Ryan,
And I'm Olivia.
and welcome back to our 17th episode of Finding True North, which is a special one because it's also the end of our 2020 series. So, Finding True North is all about sharing the pivotal lessons and moments that can help you navigate your career. And we started up the series because of the pandemic, actually, and that people didn't have access, students and even young professionals, to career inspiration and career stories to help navigate their career. So we decided, well, let's make it virtual. So for the past, I think it's been 4 months actually, we've been joined by a guest every Wednesday who shared the story of either their career, what it means to be in the particular industry, and sharing some life lessons. So, Olivia, who do we have coming up today?
Well, today I'm excited to have Yasmin Ali with us. So Yasmin and I, we met last year for the first time, but it was only once at an event. It was a 35 women under 35. It was like a headhunting event, and Yasmin and I just so happened to be standing next to each other in this little boutique shop in Chelsea, could I think called The Fold. And ever since then, Yasmin and I, we bonded over policy, we bonded over engineering. And when creating Finding True North with Ryan, and to finish off our guest list, I thought Yasmin would be the perfect person to help finish this lovely series off. So Yasmin works as a energy innovation project manager for the UK government, and she's going to cover her journey from chemical engineering to becoming chartered, to working in for a grad scheme, and then going into government. But additionally, how she also manages somehow to do media along the side, working with TV, newspaper, and more. So, Yasmin, we're so happy to have you with us today, and thank you for taking the time out from your busy schedule, and thank you, audience, for also tuning in. Ryan is going to explain how you can ask a question live during our Q&A.
Yep, so throughout the entire session, you can ask a question using the comments tab down below on whatever platform you're using. But we'll also have a poll later on using slido.com. I'll tell you later on the code to join that, but on slido.com, you can also ask questions. So lots of ways to ask questions. We're going to pass it over to Yasmin, and then we'll pop back up afterwards for a Q&A, and we've got plenty of time for that. So over to you, Yasmin.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining me today. My name's Yasmin Ali. I want to start off today by talking about values. This is something that I first came across when I started my graduate scheme, and I hadn't come across this concept before. But it's a way of finding out the things that drive you and the things that kind of make you tick. And I think these things change over time. So my values 10 years ago when I started my graduate scheme are probably quite different to what they are today. So I thought about this afresh before speaking to you all today, and I settled on 3 things. The first one is curiosity. So for me, this is about learning and taking an interest in the people around me and the world around me. And alongside my day job, I also do quite a bit of writing and presenting. And I think this is driven by this curiosity that I have. And for me, this one is a bit like if I'm walking down a new city and I'm, walking around roads that I've never seen before. It's like wandering down those alleyways that are unfamiliar and discovering new things. So as I started doing media work, I attended an event where I was speaking. And I was really lucky to speak alongside Maggie Adarin-Pocock, who is a scientist and a television presenter. And afterwards, I asked her how she manages to balance those 2 things. And she mentioned a couple of tips. One of them was the British Science Association Media Fellowships. So I went away and looked that up, and I applied for one of these fellowships, and I actually got a place and ended up spending 2 absolutely fascinating summers with the BBC Science Unit. So I think that curiosity is what gets me to these places. And my second value is to have a positive impact. So I try and help out wherever I can, in any small or big way that I can, and leave a positive impact on those around me. And the third value that I've gone for is fun. So life is short and I want to enjoy it. And that doesn't mean that I'm out partying all the time, but it's more about enjoying what I'm doing and, taking interest in learning. So I really love the job that I do at the moment. And obviously some days are not as good as others, but because I am learning and because I feel like I'm having a positive impact, overall, I enjoy it quite a lot. So moving on to a vision. This is a vision that I came up with for myself some time ago now, and I can't quite remember how I reached it. But I was feeling overwhelmed, just feeling like I couldn't solve the world's problems, which is a big task to want to take on. And at some point I rationalized with myself that that's not a realistic goal to have, and it's better to focus on something a bit more achievable. So I thought, okay, I want to enjoy myself and I want to have a positive impact along the way. So that could be, like I said, something small or something a little bit bigger. But I realized that I can't do everything, and I'm just one person. So I do what I can, and I don't have any kind of grand plan. I just follow this philosophy and get on with it. So this next bit is the long bit of the presentation, explaining what my career journey has been. I'll start at the age of about 16 or 17, when I was doing A-levels. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I felt like I had to choose a career for the rest of my life, not really realizing that things can change and I can change career later on. So I settled on applying to do medicine because that's what my parents do, and it's a job that I understood, and I didn't really know what other jobs involved. So I applied for university and I got 4 rejections and thought, okay, I'll have a year out. I'll do some more work experience and I'll apply again. So I did that, and I applied again for medicine and got 4 more rejections. And at this point, and I think it wasn't really a lack of grades or a lack of work experience, but maybe my half-heartedness was coming through that application. But luckily, at some point during that time, I got a leaflet from the Institution of Chemical Engineers. They were running a campaign called Why Not ChemEng? And I looked at this leaflet about careers in chemical engineering, and I thought, this looks all right. I'll go do that and see what happens. So I went off to the University of Nottingham, and I studied a master's degree in chemical engineering. And the best part of that, undoubtedly, was spending my second year in Malaysia. I had a great time there. It was such an amazing opportunity to live somewhere so different to where I had come from, and meet people from all over the world, and be somewhere warm and sunny for a whole year. So I would definitely recommend doing that to students if they do get the chance. After my degree, I joined the E.ON graduate scheme. So this was 2 years, composed of 4 6-month placements. Again, I had the chance to live abroad, so I spent 6 months in Turkey working on some business development. So again, really amazing to live in Istanbul, which is a brilliant city, and meet people from that country and learn a bit of Turkish. After the graduate scheme finished, I had been working in oil and gas, so I stayed in oil and gas as an operations engineer. I then took a role as a development engineer, again in oil and gas. And at that point, that part of the company was sold by E.ON, and I was made redundant. But I managed to get another job in a completely different department in E.ON as a control room manager, and also during that time achieved my chartership with the iChemie. So as a control room manager, I was looking after this 24/7 control room in the district heating sector. So looking after heating and hot water for over 26,000 customers. So quite a big, challenging job. But I enjoyed some bits of it and didn't enjoy other bits. And it was a good point for me to reflect. And I had enjoyed all of the time at E.ON, but also felt like I wanted to do something that was a bit more sustainable and also a bit more of an overview of the energy sector and not just working in the specific bits of it. So I made the terrifying decision to just quit my job without another job to go to. So in 2017, I say freelance, but I was unemployed and doing kind of small bits of work here and there. But I thought I'll leave and I'll look for something else. And to be honest, I thought it would be easy to find something else, but it was more challenging than I expected, partly because I was looking for something quite specific. And the key for me during that time, so it took me about 6 months to find another job and then another 3 months, so 9 months in total to start getting paid again and working full time again. And the key during that time was being quite analytical about it. I remember at one point feeling like I'd applied for 1,000 jobs, but I'd been keeping a log of the conversations that I'd had and the jobs that I'd applied for. So I went back to that log and, added up, made a little scorecard of how many applications I'd done, how many interviews. And the reality was that I obviously hadn't applied for 1,000 jobs, and it was actually not that bad. And that made me feel a lot better. So that helped me to get through that time. Eventually, I found a job as a technical energy specialist at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. This job was a bit more junior than I had wanted, but I thought I'll take it. It seems like a good thing to do. I really liked the people that I met when I went for the interview. And so I started doing this job. And then within 8 months, I had got a more senior job as an energy innovation project manager, which is where I am today. And it's exactly what I wanted to be doing. So I'm glad that I made that jump from E.ON and took that chance. Throughout all of that time as well, I have been doing writing and presenting. So that started probably when I was at university, and I've written for the BBC, which was as a result of the media fellowship that I mentioned earlier. I've also written for the Metro, and I'm writing a series for the Chemical Engineer magazine at the moment, where I interview chemical engineers who do jobs that are very different to mine. And I want to show the variety of jobs that chemical engineers can do. And that's been really fun for me. And I think people have enjoyed reading them as well. So a little bit more about the volunteering side of things and all the other stuff that I do that's a bit outside of work, but still related. I think this started in 2011 with Engineers Without Borders, when I volunteered to be a placement manager for them. I then, can't quite remember what's next on my slides, did some volunteering for the Social Mobility Foundation as well. This is a charity that helps students from low-income backgrounds to achieve their academic potential. So I did mentoring for them, but also ran work experience placements. And it's a relationship that I still have with the Social Mobility Foundation. I still run work experience for them. So that's lasted quite a long time. I did other stuff as well. And in 2013, I was awarded one of the Young Woman Engineer Awards by the Institution of Engineering and Technology, which was great. And off the back of that, I got to present a program called Design Challenge, which was like a BBC educational program for kids. I did 2 episodes of that. They were 5 minutes each, so quite short. That was really fun to do. I also became a Queen Elizabeth Prize ambassador. And this is a prize. It's kind of like the Nobel Prize of engineering. So as an ambassador, I promote the prize and do outreach activities. And that's been really good fun as well. If there are any engineers watching this, I would recommend you join the network. I also got to meet the Queen as a result of that, so that was pretty good. And I've been involved with the Women's Engineering Society quite a bit, so I was on the Young Members Board for a couple of years, also joined the council for a little while, and I volunteered for the Institution of Chemical Engineers, again chaired the Young Members Forum for a while and did various other things with them. Another TV opportunity came up last year when I was asked to be an engineering expert on a documentary about the Titanic. So it was a bit random, but it was good fun to do as well. And finally this year, I made a list of top 50 women in engineering in sustainability. And I think that was really nice for me because it's the area that I wanted to be working in. So it's nice to be kind of recognized in that. So in my career, there have been quite a few pivotal moments. So I want to talk about a couple of them. This picture is of Cottam Development Centre. This is a gas-fired power station. It's nestled in some fields in Lincolnshire, absolutely beautiful setting. And it's where I spent 3 months of my summer between my 3rd and 4th year of university. And it was the moment where I kind of realized and it clicked in my head that these power stations generate electricity, which sounds really stupid that I made that connection, but I did. And I also thought we all use electricity all the time. If I work in the energy sector, I can be doing something that helps people and I don't need to be a doctor. I could have a different job and still do something that's meaningful and helpful. So that's when I decided, okay, I want to be in the energy sector. And I took this placement in the summer, not really knowing that I wanted to work in energy. I just thought I would try it out. And I know that some people like to have a plan before they do something, whereas my approach is to try things out, knowing that if I don't like it, I can probably work my way out and try something else. And that works quite well for me. So I finished that summer placement and did the interview for the E.ON graduate scheme and got a place. And I started my 4th year of university feeling really, really smug because I had a job and I didn't have to spend lots and lots of time doing job applications and doing interviews. And I could just, get on with being at university, which was great for a couple of months until I got a phone call from E.ON. I think it was around about December. And they said, we're really sorry, but we've just realized that we weren't supposed to recruit chemical engineers. So we have to retract your job offer. This was absolutely devastating because by that point I'd missed the application deadlines for all the big graduate schemes. And it was really somewhere that I wanted to work. And I had exams. So I thought, okay, I'll just put this problem in a box for a little while. And I did my exams and then in January started applying for other jobs. But I also thought, okay, I'm going to write a letter to E.ON and explain what happened and the impact that it's had and ask them to sort out their processes so that this doesn't happen to other people again. And I sent that letter to the HR director. And another few months down the line, I got another phone call. And this time they said, we want to offer you the job back. So I was really happy about that. And I accepted, as is obvious from my career timeline earlier. But I think that taught me that you shouldn't always take no as an answer. And, you can question things, but also not to have expectations that anything's going to come of it. So I wrote that letter not expecting to get the job back, and I had already started making other plans, so I didn't make any assumptions about that. So because I got into engineering by accident, I would like to know if you felt like you knew enough about engineering when you were making your career choice to make the right decision, and if so, where did that information come from? So did you not know about engineering? Ryan, do you want to come in, or shall I?
No, carry on.
Carry on. Did you not know about engineering? And did you know and you learned from family or friends? Did you learn from school teachers or careers advisors? Or did you learn about it from somewhere else? And the other option is, did you find out but it was too late?
I was only going to say, to take part in this poll, go to slido.com and use the code FTN. While you're there, you can answer the poll and also start submitting some questions. So that was all I was going to say. We'll come back to the answers to this at the end during the Q&A. The code to join slido.com will now be on the bottom of the screen, so you can carry on with the rest of your slides.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be really interested to see what everyone has to say about this one. So I'll do another pivotal moment. So this is about my involvement with my professional network, so the Institution of Chemical Engineers in this case. And I kind of volunteered on and off throughout my career doing various things. And one of the activities I did was organising an event. And this event was about the engineering skills shortage. And I invited someone called John Perkins to come and speak about this topic. He was a chief scientific advisor for the government's Department for Business, Innovation and Skills, or BEIS it was called at the time. And he had authored this report about the engineering skills shortage. So organised the event. He came along and spoke. It was all good. And after that, I kept bumping into John at engineering events and, saying hello, having little catch-ups. And this was, I think, in 2014. And then it came to 2017 or 18 when I was looking for jobs. And I had it in my head that government could be a good place for me to go. So I'm trawling through LinkedIn thinking, is there anyone I know in government? And John's name pops up, and I sent him a message just to say, hi, I'm thinking about this. Do you have any advice? And to my surprise, he replied. I never expect a response from people because they're busy. But he replied, and he was extremely helpful and introduced me to people. And it really helped me to navigate quite a complex, job system, which is the huge organization that's the civil service. And it helped me to get to the right people. And it happened to be at the right time to get me in there. And I think that is just such a living example of how you can use your professional network. And it's not just about kind of random networking, but, finding people that you get on with and forming genuine relationships with them and being able to help each other out. So I think the advice there is to get involved in that community outside of your work. So I've gone from chemical engineering to contributing to solutions for climate change. So I am responsible for funding for energy innovation projects. To combat climate change, we need innovative engineering. And before we can as engineers, before we can start to even think about solutions, we need to understand the problem. So this is where climate scientists come in and help us to break down that problem. And they give us data like this, which is the UK's greenhouse gas emissions. So we can immediately see that we need to do something about transport and energy supply, which in this case is referring to the generation of electricity. So that's half the problem right there. They are closely related because if we switch our transport systems to electric vehicles, then we need to have that clean electricity supply to feed them. Otherwise, we're not really solving the problem that well. The business and residential side of things is also important. So business is about industry and manufacturing, things like steel, cement, chemicals manufacture that are quite energy intensive. On the residential side, it's about heating. So we all have gas boilers. What are we going to do to change the way people heat their homes to make it more sustainable? I focus specifically on industrial energy, industrial decarbonisation, and I'm looking at the moment at the production of hydrogen. So hydrogen could be a replacement fuel for several industries, but the question is, how do we make it? Where do we get it from? So that's what I'm working on at the moment. I think there might be a few more points on this slide. One more. Yeah, so I still do writing and presenting. So I thought I would give some tips about how you could get into that if that's something you want to do. So I've got 3 tips on the next slide. Yeah, so the first one is around getting to know your organization's communication departments and the kind of material that they put out there. So I remember the first thing that I wrote was a blog about my time in Malaysia for the University of Nottingham. And that was, organized by the comms department of the chemical engineering department. So those kinds of comms departments are always looking for content. So if you have a look at what they're putting out there and see if there's anything you can offer them, they may take you up on it. And I've crammed in a second tip into the first tip, which is around getting to know your external organizations' comms departments as well. So for me, that's the Institution of Chemical Engineers, the Royal Academy of Engineering, and the Institution of Engineering and Technology. So again, they are looking to put stories out there, and is there anything you can offer them? The second tip is to build your profile and make yourself easy to find. You can do that by putting yourself forward for awards or get people to nominate you. If you win, amazing. If not, you'll probably meet some interesting people along the way. Social media obviously is a good place to build a profile, and making yourself easy to find is, so I've said a website there, so I've got one which has worked quite well for me. But if you think about a journalist or a TV producer who is looking for somebody with certain skills, they're probably going to go on Twitter or Google and just type in chemical engineer and see what comes up. So if you're easy to find, they're more likely to contact you. And the final tip is to join relevant groups. So for example, a writers association, or whatever it is that you're into. So there's lots of writers groups out there, or science communication groups, probably in the areas where you are. So that can be really helpful because you'll meet people who are doing it and they can teach you the different avenues that you can get into it by. And I want to just finish off with 3 tips or takeaways, and these kind of tie back into my values at the beginning. The first one is to find enjoyment in what you do. The second one is to make sure that you work with good people who will teach you and look after you. I think it's really vital to have that support network. So it's good to build that environment for yourself. And finally, pay that back. So look out for others and help wherever you can. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I have tons of questions myself, but if the audience want to ask a question, you can do that through the comments section or slido.com. We have had a question already come in, but before we go into that, I want to selfishly ask my own question. I'll pick just one. So you've done a lot of different volunteering, opportunities. How do you know when it's the right time to end one? To say, you volunteered for a particular organization for a period of time, you still love what they do, but actually you're looking for something else now.
It's a good question. It took me some time to kind of work out the answer to that for myself. But for me, it's when I stop enjoying it, because it's something I'm doing in my spare time. And if I'm not getting anything out of it, then, and it's like, if it starts to feel really stressful and it's not satisfying anymore, then that's when I tend to step back. Or I think if you've done it for if I've done something for a couple of years, so for example, the iChemie Young Members Forum, I thought I wasn't really that young anymore, and it was probably time to pass it on to somebody else. And I did pass it on to Maria, who was absolutely fantastic. So it's good to give those groups a chance to refresh themselves as well.
A caveat of that question as well, the Tech Allies Network is all made up of volunteers. Olivia, I really hope you don't turn around and say, I'm not enjoying it anymore, I'm going. Please, I don't want But it's a really good point. It links very well to one of your earlier points about doing stuff that you enjoy. And if it stops becoming enjoyable, then that's time to move. And also, I love the point you just raised around when it's time to pass on to someone else, especially if you've been in like a co-chair or chair position. It's really nice to kind of do succession planning and say, I've had my time. Let's nurture the next version, the next chair. Olivia, do you want to say anything before we jump to the first question?
Yeah, I just want to say that I really enjoyed your presentation and what you had to say. And I think I really look forward to what the audience are going to ask. I think there's so many different angles. And I have questions myself, but I'll ask I'll allow the audience to go first. So Ryan, what are they saying?
Great. So what advice would you give for a recent 2020 chemical engineer graduate who is unemployed in this current climate? And it's also quite a unique climate as well, with a pandemic going on, signs of a recession, things like that. But you've had experience yourself as you said, a freelancer or unemployed.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tough time to be going through that, and because you can't go to an event and network. But I would say there are jobs out there from what I've seen. So I would keep applying and keep trying, but also use LinkedIn. I have kind of randomly contacted people, but if you contact them with a specific ask, you'd be surprised at the number of people who will get back to you. So if you see somebody who has a job that you think is interesting and you want to know how they got there, I would add them and drop them a message explaining, or, in the message when you add them, explain why you're interested in speaking to them. And yeah, I think just keep networking with people, and hopefully something will work out. But you can also use the time to do volunteering work. So join whatever it is your institution is and get involved with activities there, because you'll meet people through there.
That's some really good advice. And I think that point around there's still volunteering opportunities, and you've stated a ton of really good ones, especially for chemical engineers, to kind of follow in your footsteps. Another slightly different question. You mentioned writing quite a lot as well, and that you've done lots of writing over a number of years, and then you've also had some TV opportunities. How have you found that transition from writing to then talking on TV, which is very different, especially if you're saying an introvert versus an extrovert? They are different skills that are needed.
Yeah, I do see that. I see them as two separate things. They're not really related to each other. So I probably enjoy the writing more because it's a bit less kind of stressful. But yeah, they are really different. So I've forgotten what the question was.
How did you adjust to, I guess, your first television program, which was it BBC? Or was it something else, actually? You may have had...
Yeah, it was I think it was the design challenge thing. But that was probably before I was doing lots of writing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was... Yeah, they are really separate. I've never thought of them together. That's why the question's kind of thrown me a little bit. I see that I put them into two different boxes.
Fair enough.
I think that's fair, actually, because it's almost a completely different world when you're writing for journalism compared to when you're doing media work. So even with my university experience, I never did like student TV, but we had some people who were doing like student TV, but also doing student radio. And some of them, I guess, did journalism as well. But even just how they operated was different because they needed the medium needs a different part of you, and so you end up compartmentalizing it. And I completely understand what you mean. It is a bit of an adjustment, but it becomes a lot easier once you kind of do more juggling between the different times, I would say.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm juggling all the time, so it doesn't feel like juggling anymore because I'm, doing my energy innovation manager job during the days and then doing writing in the evenings and presenting every now and then. So it's, I can switch between them somehow.
Yeah, that's interesting. And do you find that, especially with lockdown, you had to learn how to manage your time more and almost give yourself more time to yourself, even though you probably have more opportunities now regarding like media, because there's almost so much more time that you have to apply to it in some sense, but then you also have to manage your corporate role. How's the balance been for you during this time?
I've done a lot more writing because I used to be out quite a lot. So I would go to engineering events and just be out, even just doing like social stuff, like going to the theatre or whatever it may be. So I had a lot more evenings at home, so I could do lots more writing. That's what I've done most of during lockdown. And it has been, I think, kind of good to just stop and not be out all the time.
I think in some sense, of course, there've been like many negatives regarding the pandemic, and like even Finding True North has been our small approach in somewhat to fulfill one of those negatives, which is the digital divide in some sense and access to career education. But you're right, there have been some benefits. You could be able to stay at home, you'd be able to kind of put more time into things that are really important to you and probably explore those avenues more. And I wanted to kind of go back earlier in your presentation where you said something along the lines of that you got into engineering accidentally. And I found that is actually a very funny way of putting it, because it made me think of, let's say, Isaac Newton, when the apple supposedly fell onto his head, and you can say that he accidentally got into science through like maybe the impact of the apple, like instilling some form of like scientific epiphany. And when you said it as in like accidentally getting into engineering, I can understand what you said, but it was like a very funny way of putting it. And it made me think, when you say that you accidentally got into engineering and you look at your career so far, how has it been like to reflect on your journey into engineering? And is it kind of what you expected so far? And has the media element kind of given another aspect and enhanced that side as to what it means to be an engineer?
Yeah, I guess I should stop saying that I got into it by accident, because
Oh,
it doesn't.
it's a good thing to say. There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with
I should give credit to the Why Not ChemEng campaign, because it wasn't an accident that that leaflet, was in the UCAS prospectus and that I picked it up. So that bit's not an accident. But yeah, I think it was kind of a random decision that I made. And yeah, I do think about that, and it's good looking back that I made that decision. And I think because I got into it without any expectations, I've gone through my career also not having a lot of expectations and just seeing where one thing leads. But apart from that, the conscious decision to leave my job at E.ON and look for something else, with quite specific requirements in mind. But yeah, I think it's been a really good journey, and I'm glad that I did look at that leaflet, and I'm glad it was in very attractive colours that made me looking at it. And then the TV side of things has just happened also, kind of. I'm trying to think how it started. Probably from the I think possibly through the IET Young Woman Engineer Awards, where they came and they made a video, and I quite enjoyed that process. And then off the back of that award, there was the opportunity to present that design challenge program. And from there, I've been involved in kind of little bits here and there, which it's just something that I think is fun. So I keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the more you do, the more you kind of get, because I suppose I get better at it. And as I said, if there is a producer looking for a chemical engineering expert and they do come across my website, then they will see that I've done stuff before, and they're able to watch past videos and they can judge whether they think I would be suitable.
Mm-hmm.
Taking a slightly different direction to kind of more of your day-to-day role as a energy innovation project manager, can you break down a little bit about what that is, what you do day to day, and some of the projects that you get to work on? Because I imagine that's a very interesting area. That sustainability in the energy sector is a massive growth opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. So within BEIS, we have a budget to spend on energy innovation. So it was £505 million between 2015 and 2021. And that 505 was broken down into different themes or different kind of areas of energy. And the idea of this money is to design competitions that industry can apply to, where we give them funding to develop technologies to help them to get to a more commercial stage, so that we have solutions or options of solutions that will help us to get to net zero emissions by 2050, which is the government's target now. So this theme the bit of that program that I specifically work on is looking at industrial decarbonisation. So if you think about a skyscraper, it's made of lots of steel and cement and glass, and these are manufactured in the UK. There are steel mills and cement factories, and to make these materials is really energy intensive, and also emits greenhouse gases in the actual chemical process of making these things. So some of the projects I work on, or some of the projects that we fund that I look after, are looking at solutions around how do you decarbonize cement manufacture. And then the other side of things is when it comes to hydrogen. So industrial facilities could use hydrogen as a fuel or as a feedstock in various different ways. But how do we actually make that hydrogen? Where is it going to come from? Because we need to either split it out from a fossil fuel through a process called reformation, or we need to do some kind of electrolysis on water to split the hydrogen and oxygen molecules. So I look after some projects that are developing technology to enable us to do that. And then on a day-to-day, it's, talking to those projects and helping them with any issues that they might have, but also taking technical information that I have, and giving that to the policy teams who are making policy decisions about some of these issues. And then the other thing that we're now starting to think about is the next round of innovation funding and what that should be spent on. So hopefully that gives you very quickly a bit of an idea of the day-to-day.
Oh, I have a point on that, unless Ryan, you were going to say something there.
You go, and then I'll go.
Oh, great.
Point that's forming.
Okay. I'll be quick then, so you can still have the idea. Right. I was going to say that is really interesting because, you can say that, at E.ON you had an impact in the field in some sense, and of course, becoming chartership, it gives you a whole different level of, what type of engineer you are and like what you have achieved. And it'd be interesting to kind of unpack your transition between, E.ON and then going into policy, because it seems to me that you're still having an impact, just that the focus on impact is different. Whereas with policy, it seems as if you're still honouring that focus on sustainability and that interest in climate change, but the impact is so much more greater than what you can do at a company. You have the opportunity to look at a variety of different projects and be able to maybe influence them using your technical specialism and your knowledge, but then you get to see how those impacts and those decisions can impact an entire society, not just for the now, but also as years go by. And that must be really fulfilling to be part of such a journey just by making that huge leap. That's my point. Brian, you can continue with your point now.
I was there, I'm going, is this a statement or a question? Because, but it's a good point. I was actually looking at the poll and the response. Ooh. So, and I've got two questions off the back of it. Just a reminder for anyone who's just joined, the poll was, do you feel that you knew enough about engineering when you were making career choices? If so, where did that information come from? There were 6 different options. I won't recap them all. The 100% said, no, I didn't know enough about engineering to consider it as a career choice. Now that's interesting, since we have one graduate watching live who has done engineering. So I have 2 questions. Does that result shock you? I will do that one first.
It does a bit, I guess, but I think it depends on the audience. So I don't know who's at the other end of this, but I'm not surprised that if the audience are not engineers, that they didn't know about it. And I mean, did you two? What would your answer be to that question?
Well, with me, I was aware of engineering, but not in the sense of what you could do in the industry. It's only when I went to open days when I understood what you could do with an engineering degree and what was happening in research. That's when it became clear to me, well, this is what engineering is about, and this is what is possible. But I wasn't given enough information at school, for example, as to what engineering could lead to as a career and what are the possibilities, and whether such advice was outdated or whether it was reflective of what was happening now. So that's my opinion. But Ryan, what about you?
I find it quite interesting because when I saw that question, I was like, so many things went through my head. So First of all, I'm pretty sure the secondary school I went to said their specialism was engineering. Yeah, the only engineering I remember they ever talking about is like woodwork and you build a chair or a table. But actually now my mind has been opened up to there's like no one ever spoke about chemical engineering, electronics, mechanical, aerospace. Like there's so many different forms of engineering, which when I was saying GCSEs, no one really spoke about. Even if I think about A levels, it's a different school. You maybe start to hear a bit more about it because you're looking at uni options. But if you're not down that route, if you're not going to open days and actually going to the engineering department, you might not hear it. So that's my first point. And then the second one was after doing kind of a computer science undergrad, in my head, I was like, okay, what skill would I need if there was ever an apocalypse? And I was like, would I want computer science or would I want engineering? Because computer science, I can do the software side, but I need hardware first of all in an apocalypse. So maybe engineering would have been a more handy skill to have. So I have actually gone, if I was to redo it again, I would seriously look at engineering. I don't know what form though. Yasmin, have you ever considered different forms of engineering? Because you're just like your expertise is in chemical engineering, but there's so many different types of engineering.
Yeah, I think a lot of engineering becomes a little bit mixed up once you start working, unless you do something quite specific. But like, I have a friend who studied mechanical engineering, but the job he does is pretty much chemical engineering. I was working, the graduate scheme I joined was not really geared at chemical engineers, so I was probably doing stuff that they wanted an electrical or a mechanical engineer to do. So yeah, it does get a little bit kind of mixed up. But I think if I did go back, I might want to do design engineering because I quite like art and design and that side of things. So it would be good to bring those two things together.
I completely relate to that. Certainly at university, it seems, I mean, unless you do electives or you can go into a lecture of a different discipline, many engineering's lessons are taught in silos. And you're right, it's only when maybe if you go into masters or you go into industry, then you realize that engineering is not so rigid, really, and that depending upon the company, even there can be it can be very muddled, which can be great because then you get to combine lots of sectors together. But then your kind of definition of what is an engineer really, it doesn't really reflect kind of what you studied at university, really. But of course, that can be a great thing because, like you kind of made like the definition of what is an engineer a definition that you have defined, which I think in some sense is really great. But Ryan, do you have a question as well or a point?
Question, and it links back to when you was talking about E.ON and you had the job opportunity, you went into your final year and then it fell through. And to your point, sometimes you have to challenge the no. What would be your advice on how to approach it in the right way? Because it's kind of like complaining to a company that's giving you bad service. You can do it in one way, which just is a horrible way, and no one benefits from it. Or you can do it in a way which is respectful, and hopefully someone gets something out of it. Hopefully both parties. Do you have any tips on how you approached it?
I think, yeah. So I definitely I didn't think that it would be possible that I would get this job back. So that was just not even a thought that crossed my mind. And I genuinely approached it from the angle of, I don't want this to happen to someone else. So it was kind of a bit damning in that I said, you've done this really horrible thing, but also constructive in that I said, I think you need to examine your processes and like check why this has happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. So I think you can try and be constructive about the feedback that you give. And yeah, I think not having any expectations and not coming across as bitter, because it's really easy to come across as like, oh, well, you didn't give me this job, so I'm going to complain. So it's quite a fine line to cross, I think, but it can be done.
When you shared that story, I was quite surprised that, you know, it was, oh, we're not taking chemical we're not taking chemical engineers for this role, because, and that was a number of years ago, where now when I've seen a lot of roles being advertised, they go, actually, what are the skills can you bring? Not necessarily your degree. Obviously, it's different type of roles that I'm familiar with. But, you know, some companies now are transitioning to less about the degree that you did and more on like the skills. So hopefully you get less of that happening now. And hopefully E.ON's not in that position again. Because
I mean, it was more that it was more that they didn't. It wasn't kind of set out at the beginning, so they should have said to me before letting me interview for the graduate scheme, no, but they allowed that whole process to happen and quite a lot of time to pass. But yeah, I don't know what the requirements are nowadays. I haven't looked in a while.
I'm conscious of time. Olivia, do you want to have last question before we wrap up?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I have a question regarding, I guess, the use of technology in this time, especially for your role now. I guess you've been even more dependent on technology, whether it's to do your job, but also to do your media work, your media opportunities. And I wanted to get your opinion on, I guess, how you think technology will affect others moving forward, especially with lockdown. Because, for example, with the projects that you're doing for work, that will require them to have access to digital means. I wanted to understand your thoughts on this whole digital divide that has occurred with lockdown and the ability for us to, you know, pursue job opportunities, still pursue the career goals that we have. What do you think we could do to kind of lessen that digital divide? And another kind of follow-on for that is, do you think like the impact of the digital divide will affect how we like respond to sustainability, especially as things become more digital as well?
That's a pretty big question to finish on. I guess by digital divide you mean that we're not seeing each other in real life?
Kind of like that also, which will affect, especially if you're working and you need to kind of make decisions face to face. But even just having access to digital means, like, for example, technology, whether it's laptops, whether it's kind of infrastructure that we would need to kind of connect socially, but also for work as well. We would need it to kind of pursue the projects that we've committed to, especially even for sustainability. That many of the work is, I guess, kind of done in person, or requires you to be on a site, in addition to kind of doing research. But as things become more digital, we would need to rely more on technology means. And of course, lockdown has kind of revealed that there is a kind of a lack of equal access to digital means. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that, the kind of digital divide in that sense, but also specifically with sustainability. Do you feel like the digital divide will affect our pursuit of climate change and trying to be more sustainable?
Don't know if I can comment on the first bit of that. Yeah, I'm not sure how we go about resolving that digital divide.
It's quite a big question.
It is a big problem. But yeah, it is something that needs to be addressed. From a work perspective, I would have normally gone and done site visits, which obviously I can't do, but we have done some virtual site visits, which has been quite a good way around. And I would say that one of the positive things is it's got rid of that geographical divide in a way. So, for example, I go to a writing group once a month, and we used to meet in London. So it would be that group of people who live in London, but we moved it to online. And because of that, lots of new faces popped up and people who lived a little bit further afield. So it's brought that group kind of geographically, who are geographically spread out closer together. So that's good. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it will. Hopefully, it won't impact our dedication to sustainability, and it could help as well because, well, I mean, we had much cleaner air that whole time during lockdown, which was amazing. There's people doing a lot less traveling. I hope that people don't travel for business quite as much and, fly around. I think people have now seen that you can do a lot without that. So that's quite positive. And there are things that we should continue that will help us get to net zero, that we have learnt from this pandemic period.
Oh, good. Oh, Ryan, I do have one more question, which I think hopefully the audience would probably want me to ask, unless you had a question yourself.
No, go ahead with yours.
Oh, okay. So, Yasmin, to kind of finish Finding True North, we've spoken about career milestone signposts and also how you navigated between each one. And it's been really great. And I think the audience have really benefited from your story. I wanted to know, where do you see your career going in the future? And in some sense, what skills do you think you need to have, or maybe even to grow to take you to that next level?
Yeah, I don't really know because I really like where I am now. So I'm kind of in the moment and enjoying that. And I haven't given too much thought to the future. But I think I like being in the energy sector. So I see myself staying in that. And I like doing something that's on the kind of sustainability side of the energy sector. So that's the rough theme that I would like to stick with. And I want to continue doing writing and media work on the side as well to promote engineering and to get the word out there about what an amazing career it is.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for being on Finding True North. And I guess I need to go to the next slide. So I will do just that. So we have had a really great episode with Yasmin, Ali, and I hope you've enjoyed tuning in and answering questions. And if you enjoyed Yasmin's episode as much as Ryan and I did, you'll be able to have access to Yasmin's slides and to see additional Q&A in a document that we call an episode highlight document. And it's released on the Friday, the 28th of August, specifically on the Tech Allies Network Finding True North page, which you can see on your screen now and in the YouTube description. If you would like to watch Yasmin's episode again, you can. This video, I should say, is going to be remaining on YouTube, so you can watch it again and again, and you can share it with whoever you feel would be interested. Now, typically, I would say, and next week, we're going to have so-and-so. However, that is not the case. We have reached the end of Finding True North 2020. It has been an amazing journey that started back in May when we were inspired by some school students in Clapham. And we thought, well, if they can benefit from career education virtually, then why not open up the opportunity to lots of different people, but through a web series. And again, it's been great to have Yasmin on to finish this series. And I wanted to know, Yasmin, do you have any final words before we end Finding True North? And I really do hope you've enjoyed being on this series as well.
I have, yeah. No, just want to say thank you for having me.
Oh, sorry, I missed you there.
I was just saying thank you very much for inviting me to be on here. It's been really fun.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's been really great, and I think your story, your career journey so far, and the lesson that you've learned are highly applicable. And many more people, I feel, utilizing the whole digital mean that we are in now, would like to explore the kind of media side with the corporate side. And so it's been great to see that you've been able to use them both together to kind of forward your ambitions in your career, and it's been really exciting to see that it's evolved. And I want to know, Ryan, do you have any final words as well?
Yeah, so it's been what I loved about this episode in particular is at the very beginning when you introduced how you know Yasmin, which is through a working event about a year ago, which is similar to how we met, which was a year ago at a networking event. And just to Yasmin's point around forming like genuine relationships outside of your typical networks or outside of work, it's amazing when two or more people come together who meet randomly but have a joint interest and the things that can come out of it. Just a big thank you to all of our guests who've taken part in Finding True North. All of them are available to watch again via the website. And a big thank you to Olivia for doing a lot of the groundwork behind this to pull this 4-month series all together. I'm looking forward to a break, so I'm sure you are as well, Olivia.
That's true. To be fair, I really enjoyed the series, and it's been great to do it. And I wanted to just have this final slide whereby if you're interested to know more about the Tech Allies Network, whether to get involved as a volunteer and do things like Finding True North, being on a podcast, but also to maybe share your story in careers or just general life advice relating to STEM, you can see all of our socials here. And yeah, get in touch. But once again, Yasmin, thank you so much for ending Finding True North. I think we've really ended it on a really positive, uplifting note. And yes, I guess we'll see everybody soon. Hopefully. Sure we will.
Cool.
Bye.
Thank you again. See you all.